The crystal spires of the palace caught the light of three suns and scattered it across the courtyard in dancing colors. Princess stood at the tall window of the throne room, her slender fingers pressed against the cool glass. Her heart was beating too fast. Today the human would arrive. She had heard the stories. Everyone in the galaxy had heard the stories about humans. They were the warriors that other species feared. They did not stop fighting even when they were wounded. They did not surrender even when they should die. They turned every object into a weapon and every terrain into a battlefield. The pirates who raided peaceful worlds would flee at the mention of human patrol ships. The slavers who once roamed freely now avoided entire sectors where humans operated. And now one of them was coming here, to her home, to her palace. His hands trembled slightly. She clasped them together and took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Her people, they were not warriors. They were healers and scientists and artists. Their bodies were light and graceful, built for their low-gravity world. Their minds were gentle, capable of touching the thoughts and emotions of others through telepathy. For thousands of years, they had lived in peace, trading their medical technology and beautiful crystals with other species. But peace had a cost that was only now beginning to understand. 3 months ago, the Dominion had attacked a mining colony. 2,000 of her people had died before the Galactic Council ships arrived. There were brutal reptilian warriors who saw thee as weak prey. They would return. Everyone knew they would return. The Galactic Council had offered military aid, but it came with a condition. Had to accept a military advisor, a human military advisor. Your Highness, he has arrived. The voice of her attendant made jump slightly. She turned and nodded, smoothing down her ceremonial robes. The silver fabric seemed to glow with its own light, embedded with tiny crystals that resonated with her nervous energy. I am ready, she said, though her voice came out quieter than she intended. She walked to the throne room where her parents, the Emperor and Empress, already waited. Her father's face was calm, but she could sense his worry through their telepathic connection. Her mother reached out and squeezed her hand briefly, took her position to the right of the throne, standing straight despite her shaking knees. The massive doors opened. Captain walked in and forgot to breathe for a moment. He was tall, much taller than any. His body was solid and muscular in a way that seemed impossible. He wore a dark military uniform with strange symbols on the chest and shoulders, but it was his face that made his heart race. There was a scar running from his left eyebrow to his cheek. His jaw was strong and set in a serious expression. His eyes were dark and alert, taking in every detail of the room in a single sweep. This was a man who had killed. This was a man who had seen terrible things and survived them. The intensity of his presence seemed to fill the entire throne room. His telepathic senses, usually so controlled, reached out instinctively to read his emotions. She immediately regretted it. What she felt from him was overwhelming. There was discipline like steel, focus like a blade, and underneath it all, something vast and deep that she could not fully understand. It was like trying to read an ocean. She pulled back quickly, gasping softly. His eyes flicked to her for just a moment. He had felt her mental touch. His face grew hot with embarrassment. The captain stopped at the proper distance and gave a formal bow. Your Majesties, Your Highness, I am captain of the Terran Defense Force, 5th Special Operations Group. I have been assigned as military advisor to by order of the Galactic Council. His voice was deep and steady. Every word was clear and measured. He spoke their language perfectly, with only a slight accent that marked him as human. His father Emperor rose from his throne. Captain, we welcome you too. We are grateful for your assistance in these difficult times, though we must admit that warfare is foreign to our people. I understand, Your Majesty, replied. My mission is not to turn your people into soldiers against their nature. My mission is to teach them how to protect themselves and others. There is a difference. Found herself studying him as he spoke with her father. The way he stood was different from how stood. He was balanced, ready to move in any direction at any moment. His hands hung relaxed at his sides, but she had the feeling they could become weapons in an instant. Everything about him spoke of controlled power. "Princess will serve as your liaison," her father said, gesturing toward her. "She will coordinate between you and our royal guard and ensure you have everything you need." Turned to face her fully and bowed again. "Your Highness, I look forward to working with you." Tried to bow back gracefully, but she felt clumsy and awkward. "Welcome, Captain. I will do my best to help you." Her voice shook slightly despite her efforts to control it. She saw something flicker in his eyes, confusion maybe, or concern. He probably thought she was frightened of him, and perhaps she was, but not in the way he might think. She was frightened of what he represented. She was frightened of the reality that her peaceful world now needed someone like him to survive. The formal welcome continued for another hour. Had to stand beside the captain as various officials and council members were introduced. She was intensely aware of him standing next to her. She could hear his steady breathing. She could sense the heat from his body. Once, her hand accidentally brushed against his arm when they both reached for a ceremonial cup at the same moment. The brief contact sent a jolt through her. His arm was like touching stone wrapped in warm skin. "I apologize," she stammered, pulling back quickly. "No need to apologize, Your Highness," he said quietly. There was a gentleness in his voice that surprised her. When the ceremony finally ended, was exhausted from the tension of standing so close to him. As was led away to his quarters by the palace guards, she felt her shoulders sag with relief. Her mother appeared beside her, a knowing look in her eyes. "He is quite intimidating, isn't he?" "Yes," admitted. "I could barely speak properly. He must think I am a complete fool." "You did well, daughter. These are strange times for all of us." Her mother touched her cheek gently. "But remember, the council would not have sent him if he were a danger to us. Humans may be warriors, but they are also protectors. Try to see past your fear." Nodded, but as she walked back to her chambers, she could not shake the memory of those dark, intense eyes. She had read the reports about humans. She knew their history of warfare and survival against impossible odds. She knew that they came from a death world where everything tried to kill them, and yet they had thrived. But knowing about humans from reports and standing next to one were completely different things. That night lay in her bed and stared at the crystal ceiling of her room, watching the light patterns shift. Tomorrow, she would have to work closely with Captain. She would have to speak with him, coordinate with him, be near him. Her hands were already trembling at the thought. The training grounds behind the palace had never seen anything like this before. For centuries, the space had been used for meditation exercises and graceful movement practice. Now it echoed with shouts and the sound of bodies hitting padded mats. Stood at the edge of the training area, her official data pad clutched in her hands. She was supposed to be observing and taking notes. Instead, she found herself watching Captain with a mixture of horror and fascination. He had removed his formal uniform jacket and wore only a simple black training shirt. The fabric clung to his muscular frame as he demonstrated a combat technique to a group of very nervous guards. The guards were all volunteers, chosen because they were the strongest and bravest of their people. Right now, they looked like children being taught by a predator. "The key is to use your opponent's weight against them," explained in a calm, steady voice. "You don't need to be stronger, you need to be smarter." He gestured to one of the guards, a tall named, "Attack me, try to grab my arm." Hesitated, then moved forward slowly. The moment his hand touched his arm, the human moved. It was so fast that barely saw it. One moment was standing. The next moment he was on the ground, his hand pressed gently but firmly against his chest. "See," said, helping up. "I redirected your force. I didn't fight against it, I guided it." He demonstrated the movement again, slowly this time, breaking it down into steps. His hands trembled as she tried to write notes. She had never seen physical combat before. Disputes were solved through talking and telepathic understanding. The idea of deliberately throwing someone to the ground felt violent and wrong. But she also understood why it was necessary. They would not negotiate. They would not be swayed by telepathic empathy. They would kill without mercy unless they were stopped by force. "Your Highness, are you well?" the voice made jump. She looked up to see standing in front of her. She had been so lost in thought that she had not noticed him approach. Up close, he was even more intimidating. She could see the old scars on his arms. She could smell the clean scent of his sweat. Yes, I am fine," she managed to say, her voice coming out higher than normal. "The training seems to be going well." His expression softened slightly. "They're doing better than most beginners. Your guards are quick learners even if they're not comfortable with the physical contact." He paused, studying her face. "Are you uncomfortable with this? I can modify the training if needed." Felt her face grow warm. Was she so transparent? "No, please continue. I understand this is necessary. I am just not used to seeing violence, even controlled violence." "It's not violence," said quietly. "It's preparation. Violence is what happens when someone attacks the innocent. This is learning to prevent that violence from succeeding." There was something in the way he said it that made look up and meet his eyes. For a moment, she saw past the warrior exterior. She saw someone who carried a heavy burden, someone who understood the difference between necessary force and cruelty. "I understand," she said softly. Over the next 2 weeks, attended every training session. She watched as pushed the guards harder each day, but never cruelly. He praised their improvements and patiently corrected their mistakes. He taught them hand-to-hand combat, tactical thinking, and how to use their environment to their advantage. She also noticed that he was adapting. The first few days, the guards had been terrified and several had gotten minor injuries. Had immediately changed his approach, slowing down, using more demonstrations and less full-contact practice. He was learning how to teach, who were so different from humans. Found herself wanting to understand him better. One evening, after the training had ended, she gathered her courage and approached him as he was organizing equipment. "Captain, may I ask you something?" He looked up, surprise crossing his face briefly. "Of course, Your Highness." "Why did you become a soldier?" The question came out before she could stop herself. It was too personal, too direct. She immediately regretted it. "I apologize, that was inappropriate." "No, it's fine," interrupted gently. He set down the training pad he was holding and leaned against the equipment rack. "I became a soldier because I wanted to protect people. When I was young, my colony was attacked by raiders. Many people died, including my older brother. A human defense ship arrived and saved the survivors. I decided then that I wanted to be like those soldiers. I wanted to stand between the innocent and those who would hurt them." Listened, her heart aching at the pain she heard beneath his calm words. Without thinking, her telepathic sense reached out toward him, trying to offer comfort. The moment their minds touched, everything changed. Gasped as she was suddenly flooded with his emotions and memories. She saw flashes of battles, heard screams, felt the weight of weapons and the exhaustion of endless fighting. She felt his grief for fallen comrades, his rage at injustice, his determination to never let innocent people suffer if he could prevent it. But underneath all of that, she felt his loneliness and his deep, unspoken fear that he had become too hard, too damaged to ever be anything except a weapon. Tensed, his hand moving to his head. "What?" Broke the connection immediately, horror washing over her. "I am so sorry, I did not mean to. I lost control. Please forgive me." For a long moment just stared at her. His expression was unreadable, felt tears building in her eyes. She had violated his privacy in the most intimate way possible. Among unsolicited telepathic contact was a serious breach of trust. "You felt all that?" asked quietly. "Yes," whispered, unable to meet his eyes. "I am truly sorry." "Don't be." His voice was surprisingly gentle. No one has ever understood that before, what it feels like. Most people just see the soldier, not the person carrying the weight." looked up, surprised. He was not angry. Instead, his expression was vulnerable in a way she had never seen. For the first time since meeting him, she did not feel afraid. She felt a connection, a understanding that went beyond words. "You carry a heavy burden," she said softly. "Thank you for sharing it with me, even accidentally." Nodded slowly. "And now I understand why you've been so nervous around me. You're empathic. You've been feeling my intensity this whole time, haven't you?" Nodded, embarrassed. "Yes, humans are very strong in presence, I mean. It is overwhelming sometimes." "I'll try to be less intimidating," said with a small smile. It was the first time she had seen him smile, and it transformed his face completely. After that evening, something shifted between them. Still felt nervous around, but it was a different kind of nervousness now. She found herself thinking about him when she should be working on other things. She noticed small details about him, the way he checked on each guard individually, the careful way he handled the delicate equipment, the moments when he would stand alone and stare at the stars with a sad expression. She began leaving small gifts for him, a crystal that would help him sleep better, a data pad with information about history and culture, notes explaining why certain things were important to her people. Never mentioned the gifts directly, but she noticed him carrying the crystal in his pocket. She saw him reading the data pad during his free time. Once, she caught him smiling at one of her notes, and her heart skipped a beat. One afternoon was required to give a briefing to the council about the training progress. Stood beside her at the front of the council chamber. She had prepared extensive notes, but when she stood before all those important faces, her mind went blank. The training is," she stammered, her hands shaking. She felt a gentle touch on her arm, his hand steady and warm. He did not say anything, but that simple contact grounded her. She took a deep breath and continued, her voice growing stronger. After the briefing, walked with her back through the palace corridors. "You did well in there," he said. "Only because you helped me," replied. "I am not brave like you." Stopped walking and turned to face her. "Your Highness, if I may use your name, you are brave. You face something that terrifies you every single day and you keep showing up. That's a different kind of courage than what I have, but it's just as real." No one had ever said anything like that to her before, felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. As they continued walking, realized that her nervousness was changing. She was still very aware of whenever he was near. Her heart still raced when he looked at her. Her hands still trembled when they accidentally touched. But now she understood what those feelings meant. She was not just afraid of him anymore. She was beginning to care about him, and that was far more terrifying than any warrior could ever be. The alarm woke in the middle of the night. She sat up in bed, confused for a moment, before the meaning of that sound crashed over her like cold water. The emergency alert. An attack. She threw on her robes and ran barefoot through the palace corridors toward the command center. Other officials were doing the same, all wearing expressions of fear and shock. When she burst into the command center, her father was already there, along with several military advisors. The display screen showed a horrifying sight. The Dominion fleet had attacked Moonlight Valley, one of its largest colony worlds. The images coming through showed buildings on fire and people running in panic. The soldiers were methodical and brutal, moving through the settlements and taking prisoners. "How many people?" asked, her voice barely working. 30,000 civilians, her father said, his face gray with worry. "The Galactic Council fleet is 4 days away. Our own ships cannot match firepower." "Then those people will be dead or enslaved in 4 days," said bluntly. Everyone turned to look at him. "They don't take territory slowly. They overwhelm, they take what they want, and they move on. If we wait for the Council fleet, there won't be anyone left to save." "What choice do we have?" one of the advisors asked desperately. Was quiet for a moment, his jaw tight. Then he said, "I can take a small team down there. We can't stop the fleet, but we can slow down their ground forces. Buy time for the civilians to evacuate to the underground shelters. Make the work for every meter of ground. If we can hold them off for even 2 days, the Council fleet might save some of them. A small team against thousands of soldiers, another advisor said. That's suicide. It's a chance, replied. It's more than those people have right now. Felt something fierce wake up inside her chest. I am going with you. The room went silent. Everyone stared at her. Absolutely not, her father said immediately. You are not trained for combat. You would be in danger. I am a healer, said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Those people will need medical help. I can use my abilities to help the wounded, and I am the princess. If they see me there fighting for them, it will give them hope. Your Highness began but cut him off. This is my decision. My people are dying. I will not hide in the palace while they suffer. Looked at her for a long moment. She saw respect flicker in his eyes. If you come, you follow my orders exactly. No arguments, no hesitation. Can you do that? Nodded yes. 2 hours later, they were on a fast transport ship heading toward Moonlight Valley. Besides them, there were 4 other humans, volunteers from the human embassy who had heard about the mission and immediately offered to help. They were all soldiers-like, with the same steady, dangerous competence. Sat in the back of the transport, watching them check their weapons and equipment. She had never seen human weapons up close before. They looked brutal and efficient, designed for one purpose only, to kill. Sat down beside her. Are you afraid? Yes, admitted, but I am more afraid of doing nothing. Good, said. Fear keeps you alert. Just remember, stay close to me. If I tell you to run, you run. If I tell you to hide, you hide. Understand? I understand. They landed outside Moonlight Valley under cover of darkness. The city was burning in the distance. Could hear weapons fire and screams even from here. The sound made her sick with fear, but she forced herself to move forward. Led them through the outskirts, moving quickly and silently. The humans moved like shadows, perfectly coordinated without needing to speak. Did her best to keep up, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. They found the first group of civilians huddled in a damaged building. 20, including children, all terrified and crying. 3 soldiers stood guard outside, their reptilian faces split in cruel grins as they discussed what to do with their prisoners. Made a series of hand signals. The other humans moved into position. Then, in a burst of coordinated action, it was over. 3 shots, perfectly placed. The dropped before they could raise an alarm. Ran to the civilians, her hands already glowing with healing energy. Several were wounded. She moved from person to person, easing their pain and closing their wounds. The civilians stared at her in shock. Princess, one of them whispered. We are here to help you, said, trying to sound brave. Follow us. We will get you to safety. For the next 6 hours, they moved through the city like that. Find civilians, eliminate guards, lead the people to underground shelters, and his team fought with terrifying efficiency. Watched them work and finally understood what human warfare really meant. It was not mindless violence. It was precision, strategy, and an absolute refusal to give up. But they were not stupid. They realized someone was interfering with their operation. They began hunting for the human team. The ambush happened in a residential district. His team was leading a group of 40 civilians toward a shelter entrance when soldiers appeared from 3 directions at once. There were at least 20 of them, heavily armed. Get the civilians inside, now, shouted. The humans formed a defensive line, helped rush the civilians toward the shelter entrance, using her body to shield a young child. Weapons fire tore through the air above her head. She heard the humans shooting back, Herd's voice barking orders. One of the human soldiers, a woman named, was hit. She went down hard, blood spreading across her armor. Ran to her without thinking, her hands already glowing. Get back, gasped. Not safe here. Be quiet, said firmly. She pressed her hands to the wound, pouring healing energy into the injury. The bullet had done terrible damage, but she could feel the tissue responding to her power, slowly knitting back together. Something massive slammed into the ground next to them. A warrior, bigger than the others, had broken through the human line. He raised his weapon toward, appeared between them like a storm. He hit them with such force that the huge alien staggered backward. They fought hand to hand, a blur of strikes and counterstrikes. The was bigger and stronger, but was faster and smarter. When the swung his massive fist, ducked under it and struck at the alien's knee. When the tried to grab him, twisted away and hit him in the throat. It ended when got behind thee and struck a precise blow to the base of his skull. The alien dropped, but had been wounded. Blood ran down his left arm from a deep cut. He ignored it, checking on and instead. "Are you both okay?" "Yes," said, "but you are hurt." Later said shortly, "We need to move." They got the last of the civilians into the shelter and sealed the entrance. Then they fell back to a defensible position in a partially collapsed building. They were searching for them, but the humans had bought enough time. The civilians were safe, at least for now. In a quiet moment, hidden in the ruins, finally made sit still long enough for her to heal his arm. Her hands trembled as she touched his blood-soaked skin. The wound was deep, cutting through muscle. She poured her power into it, watching the torn flesh slowly close. "You should not have gotten between me and that," she said softly. "Yes, I should have," replied. His voice was tired but certain. "That's my job, protecting people. Even at the cost of your own life. Especially then." Looked up at him, tears in her eyes. The fear she had felt all day finally overwhelmed her. "I saw you fighting. I saw how close you came to dying, and I realized I cannot bear the thought of losing you." Reached up with his good hand and gently wiped away her tears. "I'm still here. For now," whispered, "but you will fight again tomorrow and the day after and eventually." She could not finish the sentence. "Eventually, yes," said quietly. "This is what I am, a soldier. I will fight until I cannot fight anymore. But right now I am here, and right now you are safe. That is enough." Wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Instead, she pressed her forehead against his shoulder, just for a moment, taking comfort in his solid presence. They held that position for 40 hours, harassing the forces and protecting civilian evacuation points. 2 human soldiers were killed in the fighting, brave men who sacrificed themselves to save others. When the Galactic Council fleet finally arrived and drove off, his team had saved over 3,000 lives. On the transport ride back to sat beside in silence. He stared out the window, his expression blank, but she could feel his grief through their occasional telepathic connection. He was mourning his fallen comrades. She took his hand in hers. He looked at her in surprise. "You are not alone," she said softly. "You do not have to carry this pain by yourself." His fingers closed around hers, holding tight. For the first time since the battle ended, she saw emotion break through his controlled exterior. A single tear ran down his cheek. Understood now. She understood what it cost to be a warrior. She understood what sacrificed every day. And she knew with absolute certainty that she would stand beside him through whatever came next. The memorial ceremony was held in the palace gardens under the light of 3 setting suns. 2 humans had died defending civilians, Minyu and their bodies had been recovered and would be returned to Earth, but wanted to honor them first. Stood beside during the ceremony. She could feel the tension in his body, the grief he was trying so hard to contain. When her father finished speaking and asked if anyone else wished to say words, stepped forward. His voice was steady but could hear the pain underneath. "Minyu was the best sniper I ever knew. He once held a position for 18 hours to protect an evacuation. Could hack any system and could make anyone laugh, even in the darkest moments. They died doing what all good soldiers do, protecting people who could not protect themselves. The galaxy is darker without them." When he stepped back, his control finally broke. His shoulders shook with silent tears. Reached out and took his hand, not caring who saw. She sent waves of comfort through their telepathic connection, sharing his grief, letting him know he was not alone. After the ceremony, they walked together through the crystal gardens. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, stopped beside a fountain and sat on its edge. "I sent them on that mission," he said quietly. "Minyu and I ordered them to hold the West Corridor. I knew it was the most dangerous position." "You saved 3,000 lives," said softly, sitting beside him. "At the cost of 2. Would they have wanted you to do differently?" Looked at her, his eyes red from crying. "No, they knew the risks. They volunteered, but that does not make it easier." "It should not be easy," said. "The day it becomes easy is the day you lose your humanity." She hesitated, then added, "I saw inside your mind, remember. I know you carry every loss, every person you could not save. You think it makes you weak, but it does not. It makes you strong in a way that matters more than physical strength." Was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How did you become so wise, princess?" "I learned from watching a brave warrior," replied with a small smile. Something changed in his expression. He looked at her differently now, seeing her not as a nervous princess but as something more. He said softly, using her name without her title, "You were amazing out there. You did not hesitate. You put yourself in danger to help others. That is true courage." Felt her face grow warm. "I was terrified the entire time." "That is what courage is," said, "being terrified and doing the right thing anyway." He reached up and gently touched her cheek. "I am glad you are safe." His heart raced at his touch. She leaned into his hand slightly, unable to help herself. For a moment they just looked at each other and felt like she could drown in those dark eyes. The moment was broken by the sound of running feet. A palace guard appeared, breathing hard. "Your Highness, the council has called an emergency session. They demand your presence immediately." Sighed and stood, already knowing what this would be about. She was right. When she entered the council chamber, she found it full of angry and frightened nobles. Lord, the head of the council, stood as she entered. "Your Highness, we must speak about this alliance with humanity. The attack on Moonlight Valley shows that the will not stop. We cannot win against them militarily." "That is precisely why we need human help," replied. "No," another council member lady spoke up. "We need to negotiate, offer them what they want. Give them mining rights, give them territory, anything to avoid more war." "They want slaves," said sharply. "They do not want treaties, they want to own us." "Better to be alive and owned than dead and free," Lord said. Many of the other council members nodded in agreement. Felt anger rise in her chest, hot and fierce. She had never felt like this before. All her life she had been taught to be gentle, to avoid conflict, to seek peace at any cost. But she had seen what that peace really meant. She had held dying children in her arms. She had watched brave people sacrifice themselves. She had learned that some things were worth fighting for. "No," she said clearly. "I will not agree to surrender. I will not condemn our people to slavery because we are too afraid to defend ourselves." "You are young and naive," Lord said dismissively. "You do not understand the realities of war." "I understand better than you," said, her voice rising. "I was there. I saw what they do. I saw what it costs to fight them. Yes, people die. Yes, it is terrible, but at least they die free. At least they die trying to protect their loved ones. That means something." She looked around the council chamber, meeting each pair of eyes. "For thousands of years we have prided ourselves on our peaceful nature. We thought we were above the violence that plagues other species. But we were not peaceful. We were just lucky. Lucky that stronger species did not consider us worth attacking. Lucky that the galaxy left us alone. That luck has run out." "So what do you propose?" Lady asked. "That we become warriors like the humans, that we abandon everything we are." "No," said. "I propose we become something new. We can keep our compassion, our healing abilities, our desire for peace. But we must also have the strength to protect those things when they are threatened. The humans do not fight because they love violence. They fight because they love what violence threatens. There is a difference. She took a deep breath and made her decision. I am formally requesting that the Emperor approve a full military alliance with humanity. I want Captain promoted to Commander of Defense. I want human training for all our security forces. And I want funding to build defenses that will make them think twice before attacking us again. The council erupted in angry shouts. Some supported her, many did not. The argument went on for hours, but stood her ground, never wavering, never backing down. She had been afraid of so many things, but she was not afraid of this. This was right. She knew it in her bones. When she finally left the chamber, exhausted and drained, she found waiting in the corridor. He had heard everything through the open doors. That was incredible, he said. I have never seen anyone stand up to a hostile council like that. I learned from you, said tiredly. You taught me that fear is not a reason to give up. Smiled. I think you are giving me too much credit. That strength was always inside you. You just needed a reason to find it. They walked together back towards quarters. At her door they stopped. The hallway was empty and quiet. Said softly, I need to tell you something. When we were on Moonlight Valley, when I thought you might die, I realized. She paused, gathering courage. I care about you, not just as an advisor or a soldier, as more. His expression became very still. You should know what that means. I am a soldier. I will always be a soldier. I carry death with me wherever I go. People I care about often get hurt. I know, said. I have seen inside your mind, remember. I know your fears, but I also know that you are more than just a weapon. You are kind and strong, and you care deeply even when you pretend not to. Those are the things that I have feelings for. For a long moment just looked at her. Then, slowly, carefully, he reached out and took her hand. I have been trying not to feel this way, trying to stay professional. But the truth is, from the moment I saw you trembling in the throne room, trying so hard to be brave, I started caring too. Felt her heart soar. Really? Really, said with a soft laugh. You terrify me in a completely different way than combat does. Combat, I understand, these feelings. He shook his head. I do not have training for this. Laughed too, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Then we will figure it out together. She squeezed his hand and he squeezed back. They stood there for a moment, just holding hands like two nervous young people, which in a way they were. The next morning's father called her to the throne room. She went nervously, not knowing what to expect. When she arrived, she found her father smiling. The council voted last night, he said. Your proposal passed. Barely, but it passed. We will have our alliance with humanity. He looked proud. You have grown much, my daughter. I see strength in you that I did not see before. Thank you, father said. I promise I will not let our people down. I know you will not, he said. And Captain is a good man. If you care for him, you have my blessing. His face turned bright red. How did you? I am your father, he said with a gentle smile. I noticed these things. Besides, the entire palace staff has been gossiping about how the nervous princess finally stopped trembling around the scary human warrior. Covered her face with her hands, but she was also happy, happier than she had been in a long time. That evening she found on the training grounds. He was alone, practicing forms in the fading light. She watched him move, no longer frightened by his strength, but awed by the control and discipline it required. When he noticed her, he stopped and smiled. Hello, princess. Commander, she corrected with a smile. The council approved everything. You are officially in charge of our defense now. I heard, said. Thank you for fighting for this, for believing it was the right thing. Thank you for teaching me how to fight, replied. She walked closer to him. For what it is worth, I am no longer nervous around you. No, asked, raising an eyebrow. Well, admitted, I am still nervous, but it is a good nervous now. the kind that makes me feel alive. Laughed and pulled her into a gentle hug, rested her head against his chest and listened to his heartbeat, steady and strong. She was exactly where she wanted to be. 3 months had passed since the council vote. 3 months of building, training, and preparing. The Crystal Palace now had defensive systems designed by human engineers and operated by trained guards. The Royal Guard had grown from 50 ceremonial soldiers to 500 capable defenders. Ships from the Galactic Council patrolled space, but everyone knew they were stretched thin across dozens of systems. Stood in the war room looking at the holographic display with beside her. Their relationship had grown during these months. They spent their evenings together, talking about everything and nothing. He taught her about human culture and military strategy. She taught him about philosophy and telepathic techniques. They had not formally announced their relationship, but everyone in the palace knew. Even her father approved, though he worried about the danger. The danger that was now appearing on the holographic display. "Dominion Fleet," announced the censor officer, his voice shaking. 50 warships. They are heading straight for us. Felt ice flood her veins. 50 ships. This was not a raid. This was an invasion. "Time until arrival?" asked calmly, though his hand tightened on the edge of the display table. 6 hours, Commander. "Get me a line to the Galactic Council fleet," ordered, "and prepare all defensive systems. Evacuate non-essential personnel from the palace." The next few hours were chaos. The Council fleet was moving to intercept, but they would not arrive in time. They would reach with at least an hour to spare. An hour to bombard the planet or land troops. His parents wanted her to evacuate with the other royals to underground bunkers. She refused. "My place is here," she said firmly, "with our people, with." Her mother took her hands. "Daughter, if you stay, you might die." "If I run, our people lose hope," replied. "They need to see that their princess believes we can win." Her father sighed but nodded. "You have become strong. We are proud of you." He looked at. "Commander, I trust you to protect my daughter." "With my life, Your Majesty," said seriously. As the fleet approached, gathered all defenders in the palace main hall. Human advisors, guards, and even civilian volunteers who refused to leave. He stood before them, his voice clear and strong. "They think we are easy prey. They think are too gentle to fight back. They think humans are too few to matter. They are wrong on both counts." He looked around at the mixed crowd of aliens and humans. "Today, we show them what happens when compassion finds courage, when healing hands also become defending hands. We will hold this palace. We will protect these people. And when the council fleet arrives, they will realize they made a terrible mistake attacking." A cheer went up from the defenders. Felt pride surge through her. These were her people, no longer timid and afraid, but ready to stand and fight for their home. The fleet arrived and immediately began bombardment. Energy weapons lit up the sky as they targeted military installations, but the new shield systems held, deflecting most of the damage. When the shields finally failed in several locations, they deployed their ground forces. Thousands of warriors descended on the capital city in drop pods. They moved toward the palace in organized columns, expecting minimal resistance. They got the opposite. Guards trained by fought from defensive positions. They used the tactics he had taught them: hit and retreat, use the terrain, conserve ammunition, protect each other. Human advisors led strike teams that hit positions from unexpected angles. They advanced but slowly, taking casualties they had not expected. The real assault came when an assault carrier landed near the palace and deployed elite warriors. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the Dominion's best fighters, armored and heavily armed. "Watch them approach from the palace walls. Here comes the real test," he muttered. The elite smashed through the outer defenses and reached the palace gates. Fierce fighting erupted in the courtyards. Worked in the medical station they had set up in the throne room, healing wounded defenders as they were brought in. Her hands glowed constantly with healing power, sealing wounds, stopping bleeding, easing pain. A massive explosion rocked the palace. The had breached the main entrance, appeared at the throne room door. They are coming this way. We need to fall back to the inner palace. No, said, surprising herself. We hold here. This is our throne room. If we give it up, we lose the symbolic heart of. Looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Then we hold. He activated his communicator. All units fall back to the throne room, defensive positions. This is our final line. The defenders retreated into the throne room and the surrounding corridors. They set up barricades and prepared for the assault. Stood near the throne, her parents beside her. They refused to evacuate, choosing to stand with their people. The elite entered the hallway leading to the throne room. What followed was the fiercest fighting of the entire battle. Human soldiers and guards fought side by side. Energy weapons lit up the confined space. Defenders fell, but others took their places. Then the general appeared. His name was Vex, and he was legendary among his people for brutality and combat skill. He was massive, even for a covered in thick armor and carrying a huge blade that glowed with energy. Vex cut through defenders like they were nothing. He reached the throne room door and smashed it open with one powerful strike. Stepped forward to meet him. Human, Vex growled and heavily accented. You have caused much trouble. I will enjoy killing you. You can try, replied calmly. They fought in the center of the throne room while everyone watched. It was terrifying to witness. Vex was bigger, stronger, and his reach was greater. His blade created arcs of energy with each swing, but was faster and smarter. He had studied combat techniques. He knew their weaknesses. Dodged and deflected, waiting for his opening. When Vex overextended on a particularly powerful swing, ducked under the blade and struck at the general's knee joint with his combat knife. The knife scraped off armor, but the force of the blow made Vex stumble. The fight continued, both warriors taking damage. His uniform was torn and bloody. Vex had multiple cuts where his knife had found gaps in the armor, but the general was wearing down with sheer power. Finally, Vex landed a solid hit. His blade caught across the chest, throwing him backward. Hit the floor hard and did not get up immediately. Blood spread across his chest. No, screamed. Vex raised his blade for the killing blow. Did not think. She reached out with her telepathic power, not gently as she had been taught, but with desperate force. She slammed into Vex's mind like a tidal wave. The general froze, his blade still raised. His mind was filled with rage and hate and joy in causing pain, pushed against all of that with every positive emotion she could summon. Love, compassion, hope, peace, joy, connection. All the things that felt naturally, all the things that were completely alien to Vex. The general staggered. He had never felt emotions like this. To his brutal mind, they were agony. He dropped his blade and clutched his head, roaring in pain and confusion. Forced himself to his feet. With the last of his strength, he grabbed Vex's fallen blade and drove it into the general's exposed throat. Vex fell. The throne room went silent. The warriors who had been fighting suddenly lost their nerve. Their undefeated general was dead, killed by a human and a working together. They began to retreat. Ran too as he collapsed. She caught him before he hit the floor and immediately began pouring healing energy into his wounds. The cut across his chest was deep, possibly fatal. She worked frantically, tears streaming down her face. Do not die, she whispered desperately. Please do not die. Not planning to, gasped weakly. You are too good at healing. The sound of ship engines filled the air. Through the broken palace walls could see council fleet ships arriving in orbit. They were opening fire on the fleet. The battle had turned. 2 hours later, it was over. The fleet retreated, badly damaged and without their ground forces. The remaining warriors on the planet surrendered or were eliminated. Had held. The cost was heavy. Hundreds of defenders had died. The palace was damaged. The city had scars that would take years to heal, but they had won. They had proven that we're not helpless prey. Sat beside in the medical bay. She had healed his worst injuries, but he needed rest. He reached out and took her hand. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "That thing you did to Vex, I have never seen anything like it." "I almost lost you," replied, tears starting again. "When I saw him about to kill you, something broke inside me. I could not let that happen." Hay said gently, squeezing her hand. "I am here. We are both here. We won." "What happens now?" asked. "Now we rebuild," said. "We make stronger, we train more defenders, and we live our lives." He paused, then added softly, "Together if you still want that." Leaned down and kissed him gently. "I want that more than anything." 6 months later stood in the newly rebuilt palace gardens. She wore ceremonial robes for her coronation as crown princess, officially recognized as her father's successor. But the robes were different now. They still had the beautiful crystals, but they also had armor plating woven into the design, a symbol of what had become, still compassionate and peaceful, but no longer defenseless. Stood beside her in his formal military uniform, now officially titled Commander of Defense and Royal Consort. They had announced their engagement last month, to the joy of the entire planet. The gardens were full of people, humans and soldiers and civilians, all celebrating together. A new generation of young trained in the military academy, learning both healing techniques and human combat skills. They would be defenders who could both protect life and preserve it. "Are you nervous?" asked quietly. Laughed, "Always when you are around, but it is a good nervousness now." She looked out at the crowd and felt pride in what they had built, would never go back to being timid and helpless. They had learned that strength and compassion could exist together, that being gentle did not mean being weak, that sometimes the kindest thing you could do was stand and fight for those you loved. Put his arm around her waist and leaned into him, her human warrior, her partner, the man who had taught her people that fear was not the opposite of courage, it was the beginning of it. And she, the once timid princess who could not hide her nerves, had become someone who would never hide again. Together, they would face whatever the future brought, human and united, proving that the galaxy was better when different people chose to understand each other rather than fear each other. The celebration continued as the three suns set over, painting the crystal spires in colors of hope.